So the first 3 points we spoke about on how to get to net zero related to energy. The fourth one is actually not from energy, it's more from agriculture, land use changes around the planet, deforestation. Basically generating our food for us to eat produces greenhouse gases. We've spoken about this, we've spoken about the biosphere, the vegetation, and we have a huge amount of emissions into the atmosphere due to agriculture, when we're talking about the growing of rice, for example, with methane releases, beef, livestock, but also fertilizers that we use around the world for our agricultures to feed 8 billion people. So all of these result in emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but are not directly related to the use of energy. We also have dramatic changes in the land use around the planet. We're chopping down natural vegetation, forests to plant agriculture. This is also changing the amount of carbon being kept in the biosphere and indirectly resulting in more carbon dioxide staying in the atmosphere. So we need to reduce these emissions into the atmosphere if we want to get to net zero by 2050. So if we first look at the land use change in the forests around the globe, we've spoken about this again before. Here we can actually see the tons of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere due to various factors like deforestation, how much is removed from afforestation, reforestation. And when we use commercially forests for harvesting the wood, but we regrow the wood, you can actually see that the management for harvesting wood, this can balance. In this image, it doesn't balance exactly, but when we harvest the wood, we're adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. But if we regrow the trees and the same amount of biomass, we'll take out that same amount of carbon dioxide, so we can actually balance this. So if we have an area where we're harvesting wood, but we regrow it each time, we can actually balance this, and it's not having a net negative effect on the climate. Unfortunately, and we've spoken about this in the course, when we talk about tropical deforestation, this is going in one direction, less and less forests, which means more and more carbon dioxide remaining in the atmosphere. So we have to find out ways of how we can actually have less emissions into the atmosphere from the biosphere, both from deforestation and from agriculture. And we can see that the various actions that we're doing around the planet have a huge impact on the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. If we look at this table here, each one of these cars represents 100 million cars. In other words, what's if we do one of these different find one of these solutions, whether it's reforestation or better management, this is the same as reducing hundreds of millions of cars driving on the roads. So by doing various actions with the biosphere, with forest, we have the same effect as reducing cars driving on the roads. For example, reforestation. If we take areas which have actually removed the forest, but we put those forests back, we have the equivalent of removing 650 million cars from the roads just by adding more vegetation to the planet, which will take up more carbon dioxide. If we go to just better management of the forests, we can see about 189 million cars being removed from the roads. So there are many things we can do for forest management. Also looking at, for example, mangroves in coastlines by increasing the amount of vegetation, restoration of wetlands, conservation, agriculture. All of these will reduce the emissions into the atmosphere and help us get down to net zero by 2050. And one of the biggest sources of the greenhouse gases from agriculture is the production of beef, of livestock, dairy products. Not only do the cows, for example, emit methane directly, but we've spoken about this before, we have to destroy huge amounts of forests in the Amazon, not only for the cows, but to grow the food which we feed the cows, which then give us the beef for our hamburgers or our steaks in the Western world. So today we see new technologies coming where we can actually develop cultured meat, cultured milk. We can actually grow steaks. We can produce milk in the laboratory, which is exactly the same as a beef steak from a cow. It's based on stem cells from cows, stem cells which can also be producing milk and cheese, but with no cow, and so no emissions into the atmosphere. Can we actually scale this up and that in 10, 20, 30 years, we can get our hamburgers from a laboratory and not from a real cow? Maybe. And if we can, this will have a major impact on the emissions into the atmosphere and bring us much closer to reaching net zero emissions. I refer you again to some of the videos you can have on the additional resources where you'll see some of these companies which are working on these areas today.